Hello and welcome back to another video finally. My name is Ann-Sophie and I'm the person behind Sewing with Solana. And I'm really excited because I'm finally releasing a second sewing box. Maybe you remember a couple months ago I released my first sewing box for the Nikki top. And basically the idea behind it was that when I look back to when I started sewing, it was all so overwhelming, like finding the right sewing patterns, finding the right fabric, finding the right and matching sewing thread, all other things you need to sew the piece of clothing that you want to make. So I came up with the idea to create a box where everything that you need to make the piece of clothing gets delivered to your home, and then you can start sewing straight away. So this box is for the Cassie top 2.0, and I released a sewing pattern for the Cassie top, I think almost maybe 1.5 years ago. And then a couple months ago, I did a series here on YouTube, 7 days, 7 sewing tutorials. And then I took the Cassie top sewing pattern, made a few changes to it, and I love so much how it turned out. So I decided now to make a new sewing pattern for it and just make this box for you. Just because you need quite a few things to make the top. You need the fabric, you need the lace, you need the bias tape, the elastic. So everything is in the sewing box. And yeah, in this video I'm going to show you how you can sew it. You can find the link for the sewing box down below, and when you order a sewing box you also get the digital sewing pattern straight away. So if you would want to, while you wait for the package to be delivered, you could already make the top. And yeah, in the rest of the video I show you how you can make the top from start to finish. And yeah, I'm really excited. I've been working on this for a while and I really hope you love it. So let's start sewing. The first step now is to take your bust measurement, and when you take your measurements, it's always recommended not to wear thick clothing, otherwise you don't get your right measurements. So take a measuring tape and then wrap it around your bust, and when you take your measurement, you always want to make sure that you don't pull your measuring tape too tight or that it's too loose so it slides down. So just wrap it around your bust so it fits around it comfortably, that you can still move it around a little bit. And then you can go to the email that you were sent when I sent you the digital file, because in there you can find a size chart to then find your right size. And I'm making my top in a size small. And now we can start cutting out the paper pattern, and then we can cut out the fabric. And then we can start sewing. And also the fabric is already pre-washed, so you don't have to worry about washing it again. Of course, if you would want to, you can wash it again, but it's already been washed for you, so you don't have to worry about the fabric shrinking after the first wash. So now we can take our fabric, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold it in half. So the edges of the fabric, the lines here, the green ones on the beige fabric, they're lining up. Fabric is folded in half now. So you have 1 layer, 2 layers of fabric. And this here is the width of the fabric, and this is the length of the fabric. And the grain line is going this direction, lengthwise. And on the sewing patterns you can always see a line with 2 arrows, and that shows you how to place the sewing pattern onto the fabric. You want always to have the grain line that's printed on the sewing pattern following the same direction as the grain line on your fabric. So grain line, this is the length. So this sewing pattern we're gonna place on here like this. And here where it says fold, you want to place it on the folded edge of the fabric. So I'm going to place it right here. I always like pinning my sewing pattern onto my fabric, but you could also just use chalk and trace around it. Then here we have the front pattern piece. You need to cut it out 2 times, so I'm going to place it right here. And then we have 2 pattern pieces for straps. One is the neck strap and one is for the straps at the front where you tie it. With this pattern piece, it doesn't really matter if you put it on here this way or if you place it on the fabric this way, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna put it here and here. And now I'm gonna cut all of this out, and then I fold the fabric one more time so I can cut out the bust caps in one go, because we need 4 of them. But what you could also do is you could just place it on here now, cut it out, and then place it again on here, cut it out again. Depends a bit how good your scissors are. And here you can see a little notch marked on the sewing pattern. So just make a little cut here. Just make it like 1/2 centimeter deep, more or less. Like, don't make it too deep. And then you can take all the pins off. And now we can start sewing. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our back piece, fold it open, and then we take a front piece. We are gonna sew along here, and then the other front piece we're also gonna sew onto the back piece on the other side. Then we go over to our iron, and we're just gonna press the seam here open, just like this. We're gonna press the seam allowance apart. And then we're gonna put the seam allowance back together again, and we're gonna overlock it. And then we can take our 4 straps, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold them in half, and then it depends a bit up to you how thick or thin you want the straps to be. You can sew with 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeters away from the folded edge here. And we're gonna start here all the way to the end, and then when we get to the other end, we're gonna sew it closed right here. I'm gonna show you in a second how we do it. And you're gonna repeat that for all straps. So don't sew all the way to the end, maybe a few more stitches, and now make sure that your needle is down, then you can lift your foot and sew towards the folded edge. Front and back stitch, and then this is what it should look like. And then I would recommend you to trim away a bit of the extra seam allowance here. That's going to make it easier to flip the fabric, especially when you've made them as thin as me with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And then you can take your loop turner and you push it through the open end here. And then you're gonna push the top hook. So here's my stitching, and right underneath it you wanna push the hook through the fabric. Then I push it out a little bit, and then a few millimeters underneath I'm gonna push the clasp, like the lower hook, also through the fabric. So it looks like this, and then you just push them together. And now you just wanna push the fabric over here. This is always the hardest part at the beginning. Okay, so for the rest of this video, this is what I mean when I talk about the good side. So this is the back piece, front piece, so good side is facing us right now. And this is the bad side. So bad side is facing the table, good side is facing us. We're gonna focus on the first front part here, and then we do the same on the other side. And we take our pretty embroidered cotton lace detail, and we're gonna sew it along here. So don't cut the pieces up, like don't cut this piece up, just leave it as a long piece. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line it up just like this. So the edge of the fabric is right here. And now I'm gonna sew along here. And then we can cut the lace off. And now we're gonna do the same to the other front piece. So good side is facing us. And then you can cut the rest off again. And now we're gonna overlock this part, and the same on the other side. So this is what the good side looks like, and then here the bad side. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this over like this, and you wanna fold the seam allowance towards the fabric, not on this part, but yeah, towards the fabric. And then I'm gonna sew along here, relatively close to the edge, just because you wanna sew the seam allowance onto the fabric. So we're just gonna sew along here. And then you do the same on the other side. Now we will start focusing on our bust caps. So here we have 4 of them. And then I just flip 2 of them over. So we have the notch here on this side and then the other notch over here. And then I'm just gonna flip the 2 top layers up. And what we're gonna do first, we take our 2 long straps, which are for the neck. So the 2 longer straps you take and you sew them in here. So you're just gonna sew across here and then the same on the other side. So now it's time to sew the lace onto the bust cap. Do it where there's no notch. So here's a notch, this we'll leave as it is, and then there where there's no little cut that we made earlier, no cut, that's where the lace goes. And I'm gonna start with this one. You wanna start sewing from the bottom up. So I'm gonna start with this cup first, and you wanna start sewing. The first couple of centimeters you're gonna have the lace straight on here, and then you lay it at an angle. You always want to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the edge of the fabric, and this is see-through enough that in real life, maybe I don't know about the camera, but you will be able to see the fabric through here. And then you want to pull the lace to the side, so at the end it's really close to the top here where the strap is. So not like this, but like this. And then I just hold it now where I want it to be. So I'm gonna hold it now for the rest of the time that I'm sewing at the top here. And then we will get a super nice blend. And now I will cut this up here. And now we just leave this on the side for now, and now we're gonna do the same to our other bust cap. And this time we're gonna do exactly the same, but this time you need to flip it over, and we're gonna just do exactly the same, but we're gonna sew it from the other side, just because you wanna start sewing at the bottom here and to sew up, and yeah, it's just a bit easier when you flip it over. And then again, I line this up here and I hold onto it now. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna cut off the excess lace. So flip it with the bad side facing you. And now just cut all the extra white off. Looking very pretty already. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna flip those pieces back down again. And now we're gonna sew along here. So first pin everything together and then we can start sewing. Now we're just gonna sew along here, across here, and then down. Same for the other side, so we're gonna leave the curved part open. Now we're gonna cut a bit of the top here off, otherwise it's gonna be too chunky once we flip it in a second. And then you can just flip it over and then we go over to our iron and press it nice and flat, and we do the same over here. And then you take your front and back pieces that you have sewn together and you're gonna have the good side facing you, because now it's time to sew the bust cup on here. And with the bust cup, it doesn't matter which side, like if you sew this side on here or the other side on the other side, you just wanna make sure that the linen is lining up here. And then you can pin it in place. So you pin it on the good side of the front piece. And then we do the same to the other bust cup and the other front piece. Make sure you line up the linen. So first we're gonna sew along here. You're gonna start at the very edge here to over here, and then you're gonna do the same to the other bust cup. And now it's time to attach the bias tape on here. And we're gonna start from one front all the way to the other side. And now I'm gonna show you how to do that. It's super easy. Maybe a bit more time consuming just because it's quite a long distance that we have to sew. I don't know if you would call it distance, but you know what I mean. So right now we're gonna start with having the bus cup face us. So not this way, but the cup here is facing us. Then we take our bias tape, and you want it to stick over for around 2 centimeters, because now we're gonna fold it in here. Like we're gonna fold it around the edge. So it's gonna look like this in here. So the bias tape is folded around the edge. And now we're just gonna start sewing here. You wanna try and do your stitching right in the folded crease line here. And you also want to try to line up that folded crease line with your stitching here. So the bias tape, the edge is not gonna line up with the edge of the fabric, but it's gonna be more like this. Don't overthink it, like if it's not super straight or if it's like going more this way, doesn't really matter too much. Like it matters a little bit, but it doesn't matter so much that you should stress out about it. But yeah, let's just start sewing. It's just important because it's gonna make it look nicer in the end if you fold the edge of the bias tape around the front here, like this. And now that we're getting to the end of it, you can grab your scissors to trim the bias tape. You don't want to cut it off right here because we're going to fold it the other way again. So just make sure there's a few extra centimeters like this. And then just fold it around like this. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna trim a bit of the extra fabric away here, just so it's more or less lining up with the bias tape. And the reason why we're doing this is because now we're gonna fold the bias tape down. So you're gonna flip it at the front like this. And now we're gonna flip it down the bias tape and sew it down onto the fabric. And if there's too much fabric here, like if the fabric would be up until here, then it would be really hard for us to later on pull the elastic through. But now we have the bias tape folded down. We're gonna start and we're gonna sew relative close to the edge of the bias tape along here. We're gonna start here all the way to the end. And when you sew it at the bust cups, make sure you pull the fabric of the bust cup and the front piece here apart a bit. So here we have now what the inside looks like. And the outside should look like this. And here you still have the gap, the little tunnel, where in a second we're gonna pull through our strap and the elastic. Now we need to cut our elastic to the right length. So what you want to do is you want to wrap it around under your bust where it's going to sit, and you want it to be tight. So usually when we cut off a piece of elastic, we don't stretch the elastic, like when we pull elastic through the end of our sleeves or something. But now you actually want to stretch the elastic before you cut it to your right size. Stretch it quite a lot, almost to the max. So my elastic is 35 centimeters and my underbust measures 75 centimeters. So it is quite a lot shorter than what it measures, where the elastic is gonna sit. So yeah, I made it 30 centimeters shorter than what my underbust measures. So I would recommend you to do the same, to make like 25 to 30 more, towards 30 centimeters shorter than what your underbust here measures. Next up, we have to take our last two straps, the shorter ones. And what we want to do is, on each end of the elastic, you're gonna sew the unfinished, the open end of the elastic. So what you could either do, just layer them on top of each other, or you could also try and stick the elastic a little bit in here and then sew over it quite a few times. And then you do the same on the other side. Doesn't really matter, just try whichever one works best for you. Either lay them on top, or you could also try and stick it inside here and then sew over it. It really doesn't matter what it looks like. It just needs to really be sewn together properly. So really pull on it hard and make sure it's not coming undone again. So now we take our loop turner and we push it through one side of the tunnel that we have made with our bias tape till it comes out on the other side again. Like this, and then you can hook your one end of the straps on here and then pull it out. Oops, not like this. Till it comes out on the other side. And now you want to have where the elastic and the strap meet, like where we have sewn them together, you want that section to be right here. So you have to pull on it a bit. And then you'll be able to just feel with your fingers where the elastic and the strap meet. right here. And now we're gonna sew over it here a couple of times. Just do it right on top of the stitching that we've done earlier when we've sewn the lace onto the fabric. So just sew over it a few times. And then we want to do the same to the other side. By the way, I'm refilming this right now because I started editing. It's the next day. And then I realized that those last few steps, my camera was recording on 2x speed without audio, which is not good. So I just unpicked it all again and I'm filming it now again. So again, find where the elastic and the strap meet. Right now it's here, so I need to pull it forward a little bit. Yeah, now it's right where I want it to be, and now I'm going to sew over it a few times again. And now there's only one step left to do, and that is to hem your top. So I'm just going to fold it up around 1 centimeter and then 1 centimeter again, pin everything in place, and then we are done with our Cassie top. And we have made it now to the end of the video and we have finished sewing our Cassie top. I love the details here at the front so much. It's so pretty. I don't know if I love the white one more or the beige one. I honestly can't decide. I'm so happy that I have them in both colors. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for watching this video all the way to the end, and thank you so much if you have purchased the sewing box. Your support really means so much to me, and it's such a special feeling knowing that I can be part of your sewing journey. It makes me so happy when I get messages on Instagram or emails where you tell me that I inspired you to start sewing and how much you've been loving wearing your handmade pieces. It's so special knowing that I get to be part of your sewing journey. So thank you. And also, please tag me in your photos and your videos. I always love seeing how your pieces turn out, how you style them, and where in the world you are when you wear them. So yeah, tag me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever. I love seeing it. And I hope I see you soon again. Goodbye. I want to show you another way of how you can sew the straps if you struggle with the loop turner. The linen that I've chosen for the Cassie top sewing box is more on the heavy side, just because I really wanted to have a fabric, especially for the white linen, that's not see-through. So if you're struggling flipping the fabric with a loop turner, you have two different options. Either you could just like sew the tunnel a little bit wider, like sew with more seam allowance, or I'm going to show you another way of how you can sew straps, but for that we need to first go over to our iron. First you take the long piece of fabric for your strap and you fold it in half and iron it and press it flat. Then we are gonna open it again, and now you want to iron the top and the bottom edges of the fabric towards the center. And then we're going to fold it in half again, press it flat. So now you have 4 layers of fabric. And then on one end, because we want one of the ends to have a nice finish, you're going to open it up again, and then you fold around 1 centimeter towards the inside, and then you fold it all back up again, iron it, and then we can go over to our sewing machine again. And now I want us to sew relatively close to the open edge. And I would suggest you to start sewing on the end of the strap that's not going to be having the nice finish, just because now, as you can see, here we have so many layers of fabric, so it's a bit hard sewing it. So I'm using a pin to help push the fabric a little bit. And just like that, you can also sew a strap, which is easier than using a loop turner, especially when you work with thicker fabric.